I don't want anyone to graduate as a major in Japanese language who doesn't read Japanese for pleasure. That would break my heart. But when I started school, there was really nothing in the library I could read. You know, there was Nihon Rekishi Zenshu and Genji Monogatari something or other, and there wasn't a single book that I could read as an undergraduate. So I made it my mission when I became a librarian to sneak easy reading materials in the library. And it took me a long time, but now that I'm an old librarian, I do it very forthrightly and confidently. So what I'm going to do today is to show you some of my favorite sources of material and talk to you about how I am incorporating those materials into a Japanese language curriculum. I didn't give you a link for this, but what we're going to use as our source is my library guide. It's under Guides, Library, UMass, EDU, Read, JPN Series. And this is a library guide that I started when I started a sabbatical this semester. And my sabbatical project is to read children's books all semester. So I'm reading them and I'm spending my book budget on books that I like this semester. It's not something we can do often, but that's what I'm doing. So many of the series that I've included on this guide are ones that I have been buying for either the Smith College, the UMass or Amherst College libraries. All right, so before we get started, how many of you work with or get to talk to first and second year Japanese language students? Good. Okay. Do you get to do any library instruction for them? Somebody say yes? Okay. A couple of you. Good. At Smith College, one of the Japanese language teachers and I started incorporating information literacy into their program at Smith. And we decided in the first semester of their first year, at the end of the semester, we would bring them to the library and take them upstairs to where the East Asian collection is, so they could see that we have an East Asian collection. And then we also showed them the kind of materials that we're buying for them as first-year students. And you will find some of them listed under the lower level series that I will show you. We also play a game with them. We introduce them to karuta and Aiueo karuta. And you know, they don't know a lot of words, but we play a kind of simple eisugoroku game or karuta game and introduce them to the librarian, introduce them to books. And I would say when we did it last semester, half the students checked out books to take away with them for Christmas break. That is a great thing, right? You walk away and you're like, yes. Even if they only read 3 words, it's just very exciting. So in the second semester of their first year, they're still working, right, in their first year textbook. How many of you know what textbook your teachers are using for Japanese language? Okay, you need to find out, right? The people who know, who's using Genki? Okay, good. So the teacher, the language teacher and I looked at what she was teaching in Genki and where we might incorporate library sessions. And one of the sessions we decided to use was when they had a reading assignment for Kasajizo. Kasajizo is a children's folk tale about straw hats. And in the textbook, they always give vocabulary, right? There's a reading, it's very controlled, any words they don't know. There's a glossary for them. So we decided we would use that segment to introduce dictionaries to the students. A lot of language teachers don't like dictionaries. They don't. They don't want their students looking up words in a dictionary. They really don't want them using an English to Japanese language dictionary. Can you guess why? Yes.
Because there can be multiple translations for a single word.
Exactly.
And they want to keep control in that classroom.
It's all about control. Can you imagine telling somebody, you can't read anything I've never read? Yes, actually you can't you? So most of the language teachers that I work with actually don't know anything about dictionaries. They don't know which is a good dictionary and which is not a good dictionary. They don't want their students using them. They haven't had to use them themselves, so they don't worry about it. Do you think the students use dictionaries?
All the time.
All the time. Do you think they can tell a good one from a bad one? No. As long as the word they're looking for pops up, they don't care. So we decided we would use that opportunity to talk to them about dictionaries. So we took the kasajizo and we took that text and we had them go through and circle the words they didn't understand. And then we had them look them up in dictionaries. We introduced them to Kenkyusha and Kodansha, a number of different dictionaries, Oxford, Japanese English Dictionary. Those of you who are old like me, do you remember Kenkyusha, Japanese English Dictionary? What order are the words in? What does alphabetical mean? A to Z.
Yes.
What do you think the current version of Kenkyusha is in? Kana. They got rid of Romaji. Getting rid of Romaji makes many people happy, but not literature professors, because they tell their students you should Romanize your source materials according to Kenkyusha romanization. So we bring out Kenkyusha, the old version, and the new version. We bring out Genius, Lighthouse, a whole range of dictionaries. And we show students that it can be A to Z, it can be A to Un, but there's an alphabetical order to it. And then we have them look up words in fat dictionaries and skinny dictionaries, and we compare them. So we use kasajizo as an example of how to use dictionaries. And then by the end of the class, they've looked up the words, they practice reading to each other, and then we bring out kamishibai, and we have them tell the story in their own words using the pictures from the kamishibai. And we introduce dictionaries in the library to them through that segment. The first class has to go and find the dictionaries. The second class has to return the dictionaries. Your library is probably like my library. Some dictionaries are in reference. Some dictionaries are in the English stacks. Some dictionaries are in the East Asian stacks. Others are in East Asian reference. So we talk to students about where they're going to find those kinds of materials in the library. So it's a way of infiltrating information literacy into even the first year curriculum. And we find that students will then go back and use those paper dictionaries for other assignments. After we've gotten them to use paper dictionaries, we introduce them to the online ones, which is like candy, right? If you let them see Rikai-chan or some of the other online dictionaries, they're a gift from God. It's not like the old days where you had to count all the strokes. You know, it's just a wonderful thing. So we introduce them to that. And then we come back and do more with dictionaries in their second year as well. So in your handout that I've given you, what I gave you is not the presentation that I'm giving you today, but the source materials that I'm working on as I'm working on my sabbatical project. which is to compile kinds of materials that I think libraries should be buying. So you aren't going to find lists of source materials in there. There is a description of the information literacy standards that we have set at Smith College for our students. There's also the ACTFL standards for foreign language learning, and I don't know how many of you have ever seen that. So it's in your handout. The Japanese language teachers, ATJ, came up with a set of standards that they want to use, that they expect students who study Japanese will be able to do. And as you look at those standards, it's full of research. Students will use the internet to find out information about cultures or foods. How do they find out that kind of stuff? Students will find out more about festivals. Yes, they will. Students will do research and bring in newspaper articles of interest to them. That's when we see the students, right? When they come panicking because they have a research article that they have to find. What we should be we should be seeing them much earlier than that. And we should be working with our language teachers so that before students get this kind of assignment, we have a chance to see them, to talk to them about things. All right, so that's my project, and one of the things that I'm doing is to look for materials. What I've decided to do is divide up materials according to reading levels. And in my library collection, I started out by buying first graded readers. And graded readers in Japanese are tadoku shirizu. They're easy books. Anyone who's learned English as a foreign language has read graded readers. Those of us who are native English speakers didn't have that kind of opportunity. And in Japanese, we only just recently got Reberu Betsu Nihongo Tadoku Library. You should have a set in your library. If you haven't bought it yet, buy it. They're very tiny books. They start out at level 0. They go up, eventually it'll go up to level 7, but right now it goes up to level 4. Each skinny little book it's a separate book, and there's a CD that goes with each set so that students can listen to the Japanese as they read along with it. Graded readers are great because the teachers are controlling the vocabulary. So students, if they read along the levels that are appropriate for their level of language learning, they're not going to be baffled by it. But there's only one set out at the moment. So it's easy to outread at your level. What I decided to do was look at the Asano Dokusho books. Asano Dokusho is a reading movement in Japan to make sure that students all read every morning. 10 minutes every morning, 20 minutes every morning. It's at least 10 minutes. They do it elementary school, junior high school, and even into some high schools. Asano Dokusho is a blessing for those of us who are looking for short reading materials for our students. You know, it takes a lot of work to read a 300-page novel in Japanese, even if it's an easy novel. We can't expect our students to carry a full class load, learn their Japanese, and get all the way through a 300-page novel. They're not going to do it. But the Asano Dokusho are all short stories. And so there are many that are at different levels. So 10分で読める名作、1年生、2年生、3年生, they'll all find different stories that they like at their level. And with all of these things, 1年生, for the first year students, big letters, right? So there's not that much text on a page. It's got furigana alongside, pictures. If you have a couple of those sets, you'll find mine are checked out all the time. All the time. So those run from grade 1 through usually grade 9. You can also, this bottom one, なぜ、どうして、科学、なぜ時物語, you can find them on different topics. That one is on science. You know, not everybody wants to read fiction. Some people actually want to read science. So lots of short stories, and they also work well when you've got students who are looking for translation projects. Most of your students who are in their 4th year, some of them start earlier, but in their 4th year of Japanese, they almost all have to do a translation project. They have to find a short story that's about 10 pages long that's never been translated before. And then they come to you because they haven't read any Japanese literature at all, so they don't know any authors, they don't know how to find it. You can usually send them to these kinds of sets. All right. So I have included here a set that run the gamut. I've also been looking at lower level series. At Smith College, we buy a lot of zukan, picture books. Picture books that have the words with the furigana on it. One of the most popular ones we had was food, Japanese food. That one just drew oohs and ahs from everybody as they looked at okonomiyaki and different foods that they had had. And they were able to do presentations using the pictures from the zukan for their show and tell or their short presentations that they used. So I have been buying different kinds of Japanese household items, food items, school things, body parts.
You've been buying body parts?
Buying zukan of body parts. You know, because you don't know what you call your eyebrow or your elbow. So we've been buying those things. Another thing that we have been buying is this set. This is just a 2-volume set. If you don't have it in your library, you should buy it. All of these link to the website. Wano Gyoji Ehon is a beautiful children's book that talks about annual events in Japan. And this one is Haru to Natsu, so spring and summer. And you open it up and there's a picture of Hinamatsuri, Doll's Day, and it tells you what it's called in Japanese. And there's a little description for it. There's also an English translation of it that is quite beautiful. And so my Japanese language teacher would take that in with her on, you know, Mamimaki Day, and she wanted to show them pictures of Mamimaki or Doll's Day or that kind of thing. And the students also were borrowing that. One of the types of materials that we often talk about using for undergraduates is folk tales, mukashi banashi. Most of us have tried to buy them and then figured out that they just didn't work because it was all full of hogen. Right? There's oji to oma, dabe sa. And the student goes, "What's dabe sa?" You're like, "Oh yeah, you don't actually know Ibaraki Ben, do you?" Very dangerous to buy mukashi banashi. Very confusing. And then I even bought sets of mukashi banashi with the audio CDs. And then you get this deep Tohoku Ben and you're thinking, no, no. There is actually a set that we did, we bought, and it worked out very nicely from Kumon. And it's all in desmas. Yeah, see, that sigh of relief. Oh, thank God, desmas, you know. our students can, so after we use the textbook, Kasajizo, we then introduce them to this picture book of Kasajizo, and the story is almost the same thing. 昔々あるところにおじいさんとおばあさんがいました。Right? Oh, いました. And they know it. So this set is up to 30 volumes. Try them, see if you like them. Since most of us don't have a Japanese bookstore around the corner to look at, it's hard to choose these kind of books, right? Have you guys ever looked at Ehon Navi? Yes? Who knows Ehon Navi? You do? Yes. Ehon Navi, I have a link for it under the databases section. Ehon Navi is a website for picture books. And the nice thing about it is that you can usually, in that case, look inside. Some things you can read all the pages in it, and in others you can read selected, the first few pages. So you can open it up and look and see if the language is appropriate for students or not. So I have tried to link to the Ehon Navi site for many of the series that I put in here. All right, so I've also given you some mid-level sites. In our university, we use Shoto Shoto no Hiroba, the very short stories, or 300-ji shosetsu, where it's 2 pages long. The whole story is 2 pages long. We use that a lot for 3rd year and 4th year students to keep them reading. So I've included some links to that and some of the other authors and reading levels, like Kadokawa Tsubasa Bunko is a great reading level if you've got students who are reading around grade 3, grade 4 level of Japanese. At the higher levels though, and this is where I buy books for Amherst College because they don't usually touch the beginning stuff, but they like the higher level materials. So, Hajimete no Bungaku, you probably have in your collections. If you don't, even the small libraries probably want to buy it. It's Hajimete no Akutagawa, no, they're modern. Murakami Haruki, Yoshimoto Banana, right? Ogawa Minako. So they're part of this collection. A new set that I just bought for my library is called 中学生までに読んでおきたい日本文学. And that's a 10-volume set done by theme. So love stories or horror stories. And it's a whole range of authors. Not just old authors, but old and contemporary authors. And so that is one that I'm definitely going to be encouraging my 4th year students who are looking for translation projects to use. Bunge manga, actually that should be hiragana. Bunge manga series is another one that I'm sure you have in your collection. It's manga versions of the of Botchan and Rashomon. Bunge manga series, I think it's up to 15 volumes. There are several sessions at ATJ this year, the Association of Teachers of Japanese, specifically on using the Bunge manga series in class. As more language teachers are starting to teach outside of their textbook, they're using manga for that kind of thing. Because I read personally, my favorite kind of reading is children's literature. I read a lot of fantasy. So one of my favorite series is Kadokawa fantasy novels. Also some of the Kodansha young adult entertainment fiction I read. And this year during my sabbatical, I'm starting to read light novels. because I don't know anything about light novels. And when I ask kids what they want to read, they say, light novels. And I'm like, what? But as it turns out, they're fascinating. So I've been collecting different kinds of dengeki bunko and gagaga bunko, and so I have at home, every time I go to Japan for a meeting, I go to Book Off, and I see how much I can buy for 2,000 yen or something. And then I pack it, in my suitcase and take it home. So by the end of my sabbatical, I'm hoping to have this stuff fleshed out, a light novels one fleshed out, so that when students come and say to you, I want to read some light novels, you can say to them, oh, do you like, what do you like? Fantasy, horror, and you can send them in the right direction. So one of the other things that we've also been doing is working with the language teachers on novels, manga, movies, that interconnection. And one of the language teachers at St. Olaf introduced me to Homeless Chugakusei. And she showed us a couple years ago, she did a paper on how there was the novel version, a manga version, and a movie. And so I started collecting those. So far I have Homeless Chugakusei, Hoshi Mamoru Inu. Have you guys seen that movie? I watched it on the airplane and I cried. There's nothing worse than crying on an airplane, but this poor dog. So it started out as a manga, and then they made it into a movie, and now they're novelizing it, So often we'll get students who want to read something based on a movie. And it used to be, well, it was a movie, you can't, But actually you can in Japan now. They're writing a lot of novels after a movie's been done. So Miyazaki Hayao, if you have students who want to read Ponyo, you can. So I've got some examples there. Anime comics is one. It's almost all pictures from anime, and then a little bit of text. So even a end of first year, second year student would be happy looking at anime comics, I think. For those of you who don't feel comfortable introducing this kind of stuff in your collection, maybe because your faculty aren't happy about it, there are also some new DVDs coming out, like Bungo Nihon Bungaku Cinema. It's a lovely DVD collection of short movies, 30 minutes, so they fit perfectly into a class hour, based on novels or short stories, and based on the classics. So take a look at that DVD set, and it's the perfect kind of thing to look at for a fourth year class, where they can watch the movie and then read the short story. Or read the short story and then watch the movie as a reward for having gotten through the short story. All right, so I think I've talked my way through a lot of time. Do you have any questions for me now?
Actually, can I ask you one quick question?
Yes.
I try to recommend our users to read some cocktails. And the instructor does not like it because students don't want to know Gizo or Kikori or something which is not classical. So how do you convince them to read cocktails? I
try not to convince them to read things that are good for them. We had, the Kasajizo was in the textbook, and I have to tell you, students had a lot of trouble with Kasajizo. It freaked them out. What do you mean the stone statue comes to life. It's a folktale. You know, some of it you can't win on. We also, in our second year Japanese class, we used Tawara Machi Sarada Kinembi. We used the poetry from Sarada Kinembi because they're short. And we had them look up kanji they didn't know. And that caused all kinds of consternation. Who would write a poem called Salad Anniversary? That makes no sense at all. And that, it does cause trouble for some of the language teachers because they're not literature specialists and they don't want to step on the toes of a literature specialist. But usually somebody in the class will step forward and go, it's an alliteration, you can do blah, blah, blah. And they're okay with that. So I try and introduce a combination of old things, new things, give them a choice. I don't want everyone reading the same thing. I hate that. We don't look the same, we don't talk the same, we don't act the same. We should read whatever we want to read.
Okay, one more question. When you assign students to look up dictionary, the Japanese English dictionary, or do you use Japanese for kids?
We start out with Japanese English in their first year, and then we also introduce them at the same time to the Japanese one for children. And then we go back in the second year, we introduce them to the kanji dictionaries. And both Nelson's, because that's what the older people know, the Spana and Haramitsuki, because that's what the younger people know, and then the online ones. And then in the third year, we introduced them to Kojien and some of the other Japanese dictionaries, because by that point, they're reading things that don't come up in Japanese English dictionaries. And then names, right? We have to go back and introduce them how to look up people's names. So I find that I do variations on the dictionary talk probably 3 or 4 times to the students. Yeah. No, that's fine.
I was wondering, how do you incorporate the library lessons to the curriculum? Because I'm a teaching assistant in the second year of Japanese here, and to just cover the whole Kyokasha, the whole textbook, they have a lecture and 3 tutorials.
Yes.
And they're completely exhausted. So it's a great idea, and I would like to do it in our course too. So what did you do? Did you cut some tutorial hours for grammar and replace it with library lessons, or are they just voluntarily, or are they obligatory?
They're obligatory. And I worked with a language teacher, and we very carefully carved out space. And some language teachers won't do it because there's too much and they're too tired. So that's why we do it once in the first year. In the first semester of the first year, we might do it twice in the second semester of the first year, and we just pick a couple. What happened was the teachers found out the students were so happy about it, and then it was a break for the teacher, that it paid off. It's like when librarians visit language classrooms, we're like a present to them. We give them gifts. And so it takes a while, but once they see the benefit, the teachers start carving out their time. Yeah.
I really like your website, and I see the many series of titles, but you talk about the phone number. So they are usually your collection.
This one isn't one that I'm going to use with the students yet. This is for me to collect information. The one for my student, I have course by course. So for first semester, first year, we introduced them a small number of materials with the call numbers and the descriptions. And so that way we're building it slowly. Yeah.
So is that one public too, or is that not public?
Some of them are public at Smith College. Yeah. There are guides for first and second year students at Smith College with the books tied into the library catalog and the call numbers. Yeah. Yes?
So once students and instructors are introduced to the library collections, so students love to read
Yes.
the books instead of just Googling or just the internet information, but have you a piece of bits of...
You know, students are like everybody else. For every reader, there's a Googler, right? But students who love to read really love to read, and it breaks their heart not to be able to challenge themselves with books. So that's why, even if it's only a small number of students reading them, I want them to be able to have access to that. And for the rest, they're happy reading newspaper articles on the web or, you know, whatever it is that they want to read. So for those students, we incorporate more online stuff through the media Japanese classes, which are usually 3rd and 4th year for my students. Okay, I'm going to stop. I will say I also introduce students to online things through my iPad. Books and novels that are, you can, Rodoku Shoujo, where you can listen to it being read out loud as you read the text. I have a whole range of things, starting with Kasajizo and going up to Kami-sama no Karute on my iPad, and I introduce that to students as well, the ones who are interested. Oh, okay, all right. Well, I have 1 more minute to answer questions. I know it's hot in here. How many of you, just a second, work with your students before they go on their study abroad? No. You should though, right? I found that our teachers were sending kids off on study abroad. You know, they worry about their passports, they worry about their health. But the students weren't using any libraries when they were in Japan. And most of them weren't doing much good traveling. So we started giving them a workshop, just an hour or so before, on their 2nd semester of their 2nd year, before they go, to make sure that they all can use Jorudan or other travel guides so they can get from the airport to their college, so they can find cheap accommodation and travel, and also so they can look at their university's website and their library website and find information. So I think we often don't think about students until they come back from their study abroad, but we're doing them a disservice. We really need to get our fingers into them. If not 1st year, definitely 2nd year, and see what we can do.